Hello and welcome to the Perpetual Traffic Podcast. This is your host, Ralph Burns, and the founder and CEO of Tier 11, alongside my amazing Seattle-based co-host,
Lauren E. Petrillo, the founder of Mongoose Media.
Yes. Are you in the place where they throw the fish? You said you were sort of kind of close
Pike
there.
Market, it's right there.
Right there. So you can see the fish being thrown.
Yes. And you can smell it as if it's that good morning, ladies type of scent as soon as you walk outside.
Low tide on the salt marsh smell. Yeah, that's not so good. So have you ever thrown the fish? Like, have you caught one, thrown it, done any of that in Seattle?
No.
It's kind of you didn't?
We drove in last
It's the
night.
first thing I did when I got there.
What?
Like, the first time I was over there. Yeah.
Okay, well,
awesome.
We drove in last night and we hiked Discovery Park this morning and then came straight to Pike's Market to record this amazing podcast with some very sharp human beings.
That's right. That's right. Well, and today is an amazing podcast because we've got an amazing guest.
Amazingly amazing, would you say?
Amazingly amazing. Hand-picked, hand-plucked for his expertise in the agency space. And I know you're listening, you agency owners, because today we're going to teach you the right way to grow your agency with a guy that is doing it the right way. Because I used to try to do it and then I kind of sucked at it. Although all the people that actually went through my agency program did actually have a good time. I don't know if they learned anything, but they had a good time. In your case, you're actually teaching them the right way to do it through the real metrics that matter for an agency, but also you've got sort of a bone to pick with the agency space in general, which is something that you and I think Lauren also really resonate with. And we're really, really glad to have you on today's show in Perpetual Traffic. Welcome, Chris Martinez from Bloom Partners, Agency Freedom, sponsor of Agency Freedom Live, coming up in June.
Yeah.
So welcome to PT, man.
Thanks, guys. Great to be here. I've been to Seattle many, many times as well. I've never gone to the fish market myself. Never once.
It is cool. Like, to catch the fish, pretty hard to catch the fish. Me and my two kids, we both caught the fish.
Because you have to hold the paper, and then the paper is naturally going to be a little bit slippery.
No, you catch it literally with your hands.
In your, in your shirt?
Yeah.
And don't you end up smelling
slimy.
like fish?
Yeah. But it was cool, though.
So that might be Laura's
throwing the
jam,
fish isn't the guy throws it to you and you catch it. So, and now they do it sort of either way. But anyway,
wow,
you definitely have to wash your hands afterwards. So
yeah, imagine.
We're not going to be talking about fish here, but we are going to be talking about fishy agencies.
Oh God,
which I do think. Yeah, I see what you did there, huh? 671 shows and counting. I've learned something along the way.
Those improv classes are paying off, man.
They certainly are. For Lauren, too. She's going to crack a couple of obscene jokes, not so shortly. And we won't be talking about masturbation here at all today, even though that was one of the most recent episodes that you did talk about. So we'll sort of get that into the conversation somehow, some way. So, Chris, what's the bone that you have to pick? No sexual references, Lauren. You keep quiet on that one.
I'm muting myself, Ralph. I am muting myself. There's too many opportunities.
She's muted because she has background noise. So what is it about agencies that are doing it the wrong way? And this is the reason why we're connecting on this and why I'm actually consulting with Bloom Partners on what you're doing, because we both feel very, very strongly on it. So,
yeah. I started my agency in 2012 and it was a much different landscape back then. I mean, looking back, who knows if it was realistically better or worse. But objectively speaking, right now, our industry as a whole, the reputation has never been worse. And if you walk into a room and you tell somebody, hey, I am a digital marketer or I own a digital marketing agency, what's the thing they're going to think? Scam. Yeah, right? Scammer. It sucks. The reality is that I would say the overwhelming majority of marketing agency owners are good human beings. They want to help clients. It's a small percentage of people that have really fucked over our industry, selling things to people when they didn't know how to deliver and they didn't know how to get results. And ultimately, they didn't know how to help their clients make more money. And that's really what a marketing agency is supposed to do. It's like, we got to help our clients to make more money. It doesn't have to be more complicated than that. So, that's kind of the bone that I have to pick, so to speak, Ralph, is like, I'm tired of seeing this. Like, we got to stand up and take a stand, and collectively from the inside out, we can repair our industry. That's kind of like my big mission.
We say this stat all the time. And we paid for this report, so we know it's somewhat accurate. Even if it's halfway accurate, there's 433,000 agencies on the planet. Like, let's say there's half, there's 200,000. That is an incredibly fragmented industry. And the reason is there's no barrier to entry, literally.
Fragmented and unregulated.
And it's unregulated. There's no rules. So if you have a laptop and you have some kind of knowledge of, let's say, Google ads or content marketing or website building or meta ads, you can start an agency. And you can also do it really, really cheaply and undercut everybody else that's in the space. Question is how good of a job are you really going to do? And when we talk about how good of a job, that's also a subjective measure. So, quick example, I was on a discovery call today with a customer. They basically trick out trucks and they're in that space. Great business.
Pimp my truck?
Pimp my ride. No, they had trailer hitches, stuff like that. Flared. I don't know anything about cars.
They're in rugged sports.
Really
like zip striping and stuff like that. Even though we have like 3 or 4 clients in that space. But anyway, the point is he's like, yeah, my agency right now is doing about as good as I was doing when I was running it. They're getting about a 3 to 4 to 5 MER blended ROAS. Like, he understood kind of how it all worked. It's all in-app metrics. And he's like, I'm not making any more money. I've been flat ever since I added these guys for a year. And they're telling me every week, hey, look at your ROAS. Look at how great we're doing on Meta, Google, you name it. And I'm like, this is a story I've heard hundreds of times, is that you can make the metrics look as good as you need them to be in order to, air quote, not get fired. But at the end of the day, if the business owner is looking at your production as more than just in-app metrics or reports that you're showing them, hey, look at our frequency, our reach this week, or our impressions, that's even worse, quite honestly. But it can be manipulated. I don't think agency owners necessarily believe they're trying to deceive. They just don't know any better in some cases, but in some cases they do, and they do it in spite of that. And that's sort of the duality of it, is that I was like, listen, you want to grow 31% over the next 8 years and get to $50 million in revenue. Like, you're at X number of dollars right now. That's what you want to do, right? He's like, yes. Like, my goal is to get you there and to get there in incremental steps. 31% this year, 31% next year, at an NCAC, or a cost to acquire a customer that makes sense. And then we increase LTV, we increase AOV, we do all these things. 3 ways to grow the business, right? Get more customers, get them to buy more often, get them to buy more when they buy. There's only 3 ways. He's like, yes, that's it. And in-app metrics don't show that. So his agency isn't bad. I don't think they're evil people, but they don't get it, or they don't want to get it. And he's looking for alternatives. And I think that's kind of what's wrong with the space. I would even say in that case, that individual is probably dealing with a good agency. Like, they're doing a good job, but he's not getting what he wants out of it because his business is flat year over year ever since he hired him.
Well, part of the problem too, Ralph, I agree with everything that you said. I would say that one of the root causes of that issue is that a lot of agency owners don't know about business. They don't understand the metrics of running a business. So to be able to have a very intelligent marketing and sales conversation with a client or prospective client, you do have to understand concepts like cost of goods sold and operating expenses and just overall profitability and how you scale a business. I think because, as you mentioned, the barrier to entry is so low, and the type of people that typically gravitate towards running a marketing agency, not a whole lot of business backgrounds. Ralph, this is one of the things that you and I both share, is that we both worked for Fortune 500 prior to eventually getting into marketing. And so, you did too? I didn't know.
And Lauren.
Yeah. What did you do?
I was 4 murders away from being the CEO of Disney.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. You were Disney. I did know that. My apologies on that
4
one.
4 bus kills?
So we've all worked in corporate. 4 bus kills. We all worked in corporate. We all
would have been
see
CEO.
The reporting that you have to do and all the things that are tracked in corporate America. And so we do have an understanding of how things are supposed to run. A lot of marketing agencies who don't have that background, they just kind of shoot from the hip. And they bring those types of maybe like mistakes or like lack of SOP or whatever, like their lack of business knowledge carries through in the way that they deliver for their clients. That's one of the issues with that. That's why we're dealing with these problems.
They're in these creative ideas, but they don't know about the business impact. But also, not only do they don't know about it, they don't know to ask for it. So I'm sure that they've not been given credentials or information that speaks to profitability, because they're like, oh, well, I'm dependent on in-app ROAS, something I can demonstrate at large, at scale. However, the net growth on that business, they don't know to ask for. I think that's the biggest part. Like when you don't know and you don't know what you don't know, you're in a perpetual state of mediocrity.
And I'm not like some finance expert. I didn't go to Wharton or Harvard. I graduated with a degree in sociology. But I've learned over the years, and I've learned how to run a business. And I love business in general. I love running businesses. Obviously, we work with clients and we show them how to run the business better. But now I can have much better conversations with clients.
Yeah. Well, you bring up an interesting point, because how can a agency owner understand a client's business if they don't understand their own business? And I think that's one of the cool things about when you work with somebody, that's the first thing that you do. And we're obviously going to have an incentive for people to get involved with you at the end here. So open loop. But the point is I think that's what's wrong with a lot of agencies, is that they don't have the metrics, or they don't even understand their own metrics. How can they understand like the cost of goods sold or gross profitability or, operating expenses or chargebacks or any of the things that you need to understand in order to determine NCAC at the end of the day, or how to grow a client's business if they don't understand it themselves? And I'm sure one of the questions that you probably ask is, obviously you look at their P&L or their profit and loss statements, but then you ask the question for them, like, how much can you afford to pay to acquire a customer? And I know the answer in the agency space is, I don't know.
So one of the things that we do at the very beginning of a client relationship is we get their numbers, right? And so we map out a budget. So they say, I'm doing, 1.5 million in revenue, and this is my profitability, and I want to get to here in 12 months' time. And so we'll map out exactly when it needs to happen. And we always create sales targets. I would say 99% of agencies do not have quotas or sales targets every single month. And so we have to create that. Okay, cool. So you want to grow by 3 clients a month. Lauren's smiling because she probably doesn't have them. You want to grow by 3 clients a month. So then we ask.
I just put it in the chat. I was like, that's what we had done. If you had seen what's the object for this week is to keep our sales tracker so that we can track these. Because
she's furiously slacking our internal team.
No,
so if you work in sales in corporate America, you would
Ralph.
understand the importance of the pipeline and your quota and all that other stuff.
No, I'm just kidding. I know you do.
The point that I'm making is that once we establish a quota, even if it's 1 client a month or 3 clients a month, then the next question we ask is, how much are you willing to invest to acquire a client? Do you know how many people have actually thought about that? Maybe 1 out of 50.
I know my number, hands down. Okay, I know my number without a beat. I know what I'm willing, and I know my true ceiling and my floor.
And to me, these are basic marketing questions that we should all be asking our clients too. If you're willing to invest, let's just say $1,000 for a client, and you close at 20%, then you say, okay, well, how much am I looking to invest? I know it should be higher. How much am I willing to invest to get an appointment? If you're closing at 20%, then you should be willing to invest $200 to get that appointment. So very, very basic things.
You back it out.
You just back it out.
All of this is really math.
It's all math. I know it scares some people, and it's not necessarily fun.
Trickle-down marketing economics.
Makes it
but
sound
it's not
sinister.
hard math. It's not like derivatives and
it's
advanced algebra here.
It's 99-cent store calculator math. We can all do this. Now, we do have a data analyst that'll go through and put in all these crazy calculations. Like if you have a sales team and you need to calculate commission rates and what their quota should be and product mix and what you should sell of each one and ARPU and all this other stuff,
ARPU?
ARPU? You've never heard that term? Average revenue per unit?
Oh, no.
Yeah, that's a good one for Jeopardy.
That sounds like a character of the next Disney film.
It could be.
What is it? So tell the agency listener who's like, all right, all this makes sense. I'm sick of Burns ranting about agencies yet again. Martinez is here. Sounds like he kind of knows what he's talking about.
It's my favorite part when you rant about agencies.
The point is it needs to be said because nobody's really listening the first time. That's sort of what I figure. The point is what's your first step? How do you do it? How do you figure out what that number is and then back it out and then say, oh, okay, if you want to grow by X amount, this is what you need more of. And then you determine what actions they need to take. Take us through that whole sort of process.
And I'm going to explain it in a way so that really anybody can do this. It's just something that we happen to do all the time. So obviously it's way easier. And if you want to try and do it yourself, send me a message. I'll walk you through it if you want. So there's two aspects of figuring out how to get from point A to point B. The first one where we like to start is the team. So who do you have on the team now? What are they doing? And then what do we need them to do? So if I'm going to use a sports analogy, right? So let's say there's 11 players on the field, right? The goalkeeper obviously has to keep the ball from going in the net, right? If your goalkeeper is not able to do that, can we train that goalkeeper, or do we need to trade them and bring in somebody who can? Your forwards have got to score goals. Your midfielders have got to be playmakers, right? Yeah, woo to the midfielders. So everybody has a specific function on the field. And in soccer, for all the soccer players that are listening, you might change up your lineup based on the team that you're playing and if you're home and away. So maybe they've got just massive bodies in the back and there's no chance of you winning head balls. And then you'll put Lauren Petrullo up at top and just have her receive those balls and then play the midfielders through. So you need the right team in your agency. If they can't do what you need them to do, we got to level them up and train them to do that. Otherwise, we are going to have to find somebody else.
Can I stop you there for a second? How do you know that? Is it based upon you do an analysis of retention versus attrition? How do you know? Because that's an easy thing. Like, I get it. There's 11 players on the field. We're using the soccer analogy here. Get a little deeper on that, because that's where people are like, well, I've got 7 media buyers and I've got 2 creative people and I've got a strategist and then I've got, a dev person.
So this feeds perfectly into my second one, which is the numbers. So the second thing that we got to do is we got to dive into the numbers and we got to see what's actually going on into the business. So we got to look at the numbers. One of the first things I look at is the cost of goods sold. So specifically to your question, Ralph, are we staying within the budget? So what I like to see, and there's some variance here, but what I like to see is whatever your revenue is, I like to see 30 to 35% of that going towards cost of goods sold, meaning mainly the fulfillment team that's producing the deliverables and any other software that we're using for fulfillment. So all your fulfillment stuff, I like to see that around 30 to 35% of the revenue. The reason I start there is because if we're losing money on cost of goods sold and our gross margin isn't healthy, it makes everything else more difficult. So we go in there. So if you have 7 media buyers, right, and I'm looking at your revenue and I'm looking at your cost of goods, and this is like really happens, like some people's cost of goods is like 70% or 80%.
And by cost of goods, you mean cost of fulfillment?
It's mainly, those two are typically synonymous. Cost of fulfillment is usually cost of goods sold.
It is related to revenue. You have media buyers in this case relate to like how much revenue comes in, how busy they are. That is a cost that rises and falls with sales in essence. Although a lot of people would debate that because it's personnel, but anyway.
Well, there's like with labor, because labor is if they're doing marketing for internal purposes. So if our media buyers are doing hours on Mongoose Media ads, whether it's on like Pornhub or Facebook, that doesn't count in the cost of fulfillment because Mongoose Media is an internal client.
So when Lauren is advertising for herself on Pornhub, that is more considered an operating expense. But if Pornhub is a client,
good point,
and they're fulfilling for that client, now it becomes cost of goods sold. See how I tied that all together there?
That's good. You've done podcasts before.
I've done this a couple times. So if that number, if that percentage of revenue is higher than 35% more or less, then I look and see what's the issue here. I'll then actually switch and I'll go look at churn, because churn is a great indicator if we're actually getting results for the clients. What we sell, as I mentioned, is inherently easy, right? Where clients are giving us a few grand a month and we're turning that around and we're generating a lot more money for them. That's really what we're here for. And if we're not doing that, then a lot of the times they're going to cancel. It's not the only thing. We do have to manage the relationship and build trust and all those things. But if we're not making money for our clients, they're going to cancel. So then if I look at those two things, I see budget and I see high churn, right? Over budget and high churn. Then it goes back to the people conversation. It's like, okay, yes, you have those 7 media buyers. Who are the ones that are actually making money for the clients? And the ones that are not, because it's usually just a couple bad apples that are ruining it for everybody. We have to make the decision. red, yellow, green. If they're green, then they're great and we keep them. If they're yellow, it's somebody that maybe we can train. Or if it's red, like this person's been a problem for a long time, let's just cut our losses and move on. It's not easy to do that. But again, we're making those decisions with facts and not feelings. Because it's like, if this person's been making that mistake for the past 3 years and they're still on the team, now that's an us problem. That's an ownership problem. Like, this person's not going to improve. And maybe they were great when the agency was smaller and we were doing, $500,000 and whatever. But now we're playing a different game. We're in the big leagues here. We need better quality people that can perform for our clients. Otherwise, we suffer. And that's how we lose our reputation. And then they call us scammers. And then it's bad.
I think that's a good place to just reiterate that point, is that I find that in almost every roundtable or any group discussion that I ever do with agency owners, it's always like, oh, I need to let this person go, but I just can't, because then I have to go out and hire. And so they just let them fester longer and longer and longer. And I think your percentages of like, I've got 7 and maybe 2 of them are great, and then the others are sort of in the either yellow or red. The reds, like, the hardest part is letting go of the reds. I mean, it's apparently not a problem for me because I've hired more people than I've probably hired. No, that's not actually true. But the point is, there's an art and a science to it. You have to understand that you have to separate out the feelings. Although I will say, you say facts, not feelings a lot. I think all business is personal. And so there are feelings, and it's to separate them, to be cold. And my wife tells me this all the time. She's like, you're so cold when it comes to these sorts of decisions. It's not. I just have to separate it out, because I come across that way because it is personal. You develop relationships with these people. And that's the hardest thing to do. And making that decision, I always sort of look at, and if you're an agency owner, you have 7 people on your staff right now, right in the analogy that we're talking about here, maybe you got 11-person crew, whatever it is, ask yourself the question, if I let this person go today, would I be happy or sad, or ecstatic and relieved? Or if they quit today, or would I do everything I possibly could to save them? And that's a great differentiator. And if it's you're relieved or you're slightly happy, you need to take action. So what do you do there? I guess, what's with the facts, not feelings? Like, how do you coach your individuals? Because I see that as one of the biggest issues, because it really is hard to separate that out.
So when I say facts, not feelings, I'm not saying to just be a robot and ignore your feelings. What I am saying, though, is don't let your feelings dictate all of your decisions. Your feelings, your gut, can absolutely make you aware of problems. That's how we've survived as a species, is we do have an instinct. But at the same time, if your instinct is essentially to help you survive, that instinct can also keep you from making a decision that you have to make as an agency owner that gets outside of your comfort zone. You might be playing it safe. You might be hanging on to somebody that's not a good fit, right? So that's why I'm saying you need to ultimately make the decision with facts and not feelings. So when I go through, and if we're going to determine whether or not we have to let a team member go, we'll go through their job description, another thing that most agency owners don't have. We'll go through a job description that lists out exactly the things that person needs to do to be successful at their job. We put our job descriptions as daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, semi-annual goals.
Or a job map, job description, we call it job map, but it's the same thing. Oh my God, I guarantee you.
So we just go through a checklist. Are they doing this?
Whether you're a business and you're listening to this, you're like, oh, should I hire an agency? Or I am an agency listening to this. Having that is actually absolutely critical.
Yeah, I got that from my wife, actually. She's amazing at the whole HR.
Yeah, she's great with that stuff. So
we'll go through that, and now we're starting to look, okay, they can't do the job. How long have they been training? Have we been trying to fix this for months, weeks, months, sometimes years? Then it goes to, well, what's the alternative if we keep them on? And you look at the growth trajectory that we have and our budget and all the things that we're looking to accomplish. As an owner, you have to also recognize that if you're keeping somebody on the team that is not a great player, your great players are looking at that and they are considering leaving because of that reason. And they're looking at you and they're wondering what the hell is wrong with you. And maybe they're questioning your ability to lead. So you could potentially lose a great person because you're tolerating an underperformer.
People forget that so much. And like, if you're really, really uncomfortable with this, you have to start thinking, are you the right fit for the role that you're in right now? And even like, I've had this conversation with just some of my managers, like they absolutely hate this stuff. I'm like, we have to reevaluate whether or not you're in the right role within the organization. If we have another seat on the bus that perfectly fits your talents, your skills, great. If not, we might want to move on. And we have done that. And that's really hard because these kinds of decisions are not made lightly. And to be able to do them takes a lot of courage. And you should never feel like you enjoy it. That's masochistic, but you should feel badly, yes. But if you are just riddled with guilt, even when somebody is a bad hire and you know they're a bad hire, and when you do finally let them go, everyone who's good finally like, what took them so long?
Those are the worst conversations because then it's like, well, we were ready to quit. And it's like, at least I can speak from my standpoint. I'm like, well, why did no one tell me? I was under the impression that this was all happy-go-lucky. I didn't realize that this had become pervasive.
Yeah, you would think that they would speak up. They're terrified. And in reality, that's not their job, really. Like you're there. This is the part of being an owner that I think is the least sexy and definitely the least fun, is basically holding people accountable. Who really likes going around and holding everybody accountable? From a sports perspective, though, think about the best coaches that you ever had in your life. Those are the folks that made you stay late, that made you run when you didn't want to, that pushed you,
Called you out on your
called
shit.
you out. Yeah, go hard in that tackle. What's wrong with you? You're going up half-assed for those head balls. I know you can do that. Those are the people who get the best out of you. The soft coaches, we don't even think about them anymore.
Oh my gosh, I remember I was like, I can walk all over this coach. Like they don't actually care, so why should I care?
Exactly. So that's part of your job as the boss, as the owner, is you have to go around holding people accountable. And we have systems to be able to do that so that it's fair and ethical, and obviously makes it a lot easier to make these hard decisions. But that's what you signed up for as an owner. And if you want to build a business that you could sell one day, that's an asset that you can sell one day, I promise you, you have to have these systems in place.
One level of accountability, though, there has to be a moment where you have to evaluate, did you hire the wrong client? Because there are times where you could have really great A players, and I'm just going to use the media buyer example, and it's like they have a bad offer. They've done everything. They're not updating their tracking, or they will not pivot their offer to match what the market demands. And so then you're doing everything you can. And I have seen talented media buyers wither away because everything that they're trying isn't working and there's no cooperation back. Putting that aside, the accountability has to go both ways.
I agree 100%. And this is why you have an SOP for what's a good client. And that needs to go all the way.
Wait, what? You have an SOP for what's a good client?
All the way through to the sales team. These are the boxes that they check to make sure that they're a good client for us, that we can bring them on. Here's something that I've never seen anybody else do. When you're onboarding a client, a new client, you walk through all the things that they have to do, right? It's kind of like a checklist of like, hey, if you need to do this as our client.
The agency for agreement.
And you go through these 4 agreements or whatever, and then you send it to them to sign. We do this for our clients. You send them a document. We call it a best practices document. And you have them sign it. Is it legally enforceable? No. But there is now a mutual agreement amongst people that, hey, yes, I understand that I need to do these things. And if I don't do these things, then I might get dropped as a client.
So like earlier, communicating financials of if the cost of goods increases or if financially speaking, you need to communicate when, like right now with everything with the tariffs, costs are going so high for many of the products that we're selling that if we don't get that carryover and we're not communicated the moving targets, like how we can have impact with our marketing efforts, then they're not following through with the agreement because we're held to an accountable standard that we've not been communicated to.
That's a great one that you could put in there. And who could have predicted the tariffs? But if you had something in there that says, like, hey, if costs are adjusting and we might need to adjust our target cost of acquisition or whatever. So that also is part of the reason why you need to be really good at understanding business so that you can then educate your clients, because a lot of the times they're not even thinking about that either.
Yeah. So what's next? after you figure out who your people are, you have those tough conversations, you figure out who's on the team. Now it's like back to find, like, what's the next step in the journey for you all? Because you take people through this.
Yeah. So ultimately, after we have our team that we need now, also in the future, that's going to help us get to our goals, we have this whole budget that lists out their financial targets, their sales goals, their cost of good goals, their net profit goals, everything. We map all of that out, and then we hand them the tools, and we hand them the plan, and we say, "Hey, here you go. Go ahead and execute that on your own." Or that's where we could come in and do a longer term engagement. Our clients say that they love the clarity. So one of the things that our clients love about us is ultimately having us there in their business every single week, every single day if they need us, just dragging them across the finish line. And so we implement our facts, not feelings method, of course, which means that you're going to have a whole lot of reporting that you've probably never done before or have looked at. You're going to have to send us the financials every single month, because that's how we make sure that we're actually on track and making money. And it's just a new way of running the company. And there is a level of transformation that the owner has to go through as well. But our clients that work with us are ready for that, because they, as I mentioned before, these people want to build an asset that they can sell one day. It's a big, big component of who we work with. Is they've been doing this for a while, and they're like, you know what? I know that I'm not going to do this forever, but I see where I'm at today, and I know that I'm on to something. There's just this gap that I don't know how to get from point A to point B, and that's why they need to have the Bloom team come in and help them to do that.
So the analysis we were sort of talking about, to start this whole conversation, like how much you can afford to pay to acquire a customer if you're an agency. And most don't really know it's, one of these, but we're talking about like figure out your profitability. And then as a result of that, there's probably some internal, churn might be an issue of bad client, but also bad employee. That's a whole other conversation. Clearing out your red, yellow, greens as far as like your best employees go, the ones that are actually carrying the team and the ones that are dragging everybody down. Got it. Then you're actually closer, because you now know what the big number is, what your COGS number is, basically what your gross profitability is, because gross profitability is revenue minus COGS, and then you got your GP. And then from there, you determine what, like the growth that most agencies want. The ones that I talk to are like, yeah, just get me more leads, man. And then they don't know how much to pay to acquire a lead. And then that would be sort of the step, like that's the step before the step that is actually the cost to acquire a sale.
First, I'll do a little analogy of the business analysis that we do. It's like doing a full diagnostic test of your body, for example. So we're doing blood work, we're doing, CT scans, we're going through everything that's going on in the business. And that will give us an understanding of why we're at where we're at today. Second piece of this, and this is really like, I think it's the value, is what needs to change for us to get to this goal that I have. So if that goal is 5 million revenue, if that goal is a $10 million exit or a $20 million exit, we map that out for you over the next 3 years. These are the things, this is where you're at today, which is very, very important. That's our benchmark. These are the things that we have to fix. Maybe it's a churn thing. Maybe it's a cost of goods thing. Maybe it's a people thing. Maybe it's a profitability thing where you're not building your business for profit. And to be able to do that, maybe we got to raise prices. Maybe we got to let people go. Maybe we have to bring on better people. Maybe we have to invest in our own marketing. It's different for everybody. But that's ultimately what we do in that business analysis. And so when you leave, you know exactly what needs to change for you to be able to hit that target. Does that make sense, Ralph?
It does. Like, what's the resource that you have for people who are listening that might assist them with this, or at least take sort of that first step?
Well, we call it our profitable agency business analysis. That's our fancy term that we have here at Bloom. We charge normally $2,500 for that. For the first 5 people who are listening right now, if you are over $1 million in revenue, have to be over $1 million in revenue. And I'm not like, don't put ad spend in there because I will catch you. If you're over $1 million in revenue, you can get this profitable agency business analysis, which we normally charge for $2,500. You can get it for free. 5 people. So you got to go to the page and act fast. Just go to agencyexitplan.com and we'll do this whole thing, the whole analysis, everything for you. We'll meet one-on-one on a live call. It's 2 hours. We'll give it to you for free. So go to agencyexitplan.com.
agencyexitplan.com. And oh, by the way, we didn't mention, like, you've exited your agency. Like, you actually know what you're talking about with this sort of stuff, like how to prep for sale.
That's the bigger piece of what we're doing as well. So we're actually helping an agency to do an exit right now. Husband and wife team, amazing, amazing people who've built a great business. And so we are deep in it and things are going very, very well. So yes, I know what I'm talking about.
And that's the big goal, like, to get to the point where you actually market yourself to the outside world, to the private equity world, to the larger strategic, whether you want to be a tuck-in, whatever it is that you want to do. But if you want to sell your business and you're an agency owner, you have to have a system. Like, these guys will eviscerate you, the private equities of the world, unless you have numbers that match. Churn, obviously, we talked about employee churn to a certain degree, but employees relating back to curing churn, number one issue. Like, when we went down this road 3 years ago, that was the thing that they've dialed in on us so much. And then it's EBITDA. It's about, like, earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization, which is basically profit, net profit, like what's left over, then add backs. And then they want to see a proven model of acquiring customers to affect better churn, the right types of customers and or clients, and then also increase profitability going long term, because what they're paying for is your profit right now, but really what they're pricing you for is your profit in the future. And that has to do with everything that you talked about here. And I've seen the model, and the reason why I'm on staff, what was my role there? Consultant, staff, advisory partner, is because well, it's great. We'll leave that too, because I always like to see myself on a website. The point is that you guys do it right. And you also have, where I'm going to actually be at this in June, you have a live event in San Diego. Everyone wants to go to San Diego, so why not go? Tell us about that one.
So it's the first time in history, at least that I know of, where there will be an agency event talking and showing you exactly how to build an agency that you can sell one day for 8 figures or more. The speaker lineup is insane. Obviously, Ralph's going to be there. We have people on the stage that have done over $650 million in exits, people that like have done it before, right? So there's nobody better to learn from than them. It's a small, intimate event. We'll have about 100 people there. It's workshop style, and definitely do the VIP, because then you can have lunch and meet all the speakers. That's in June 25th to the 20th.
And where do they get that?
agencyfreedomlive.com.
Okay, so agencyfreedomlive.com. And then also for the freebie, if you're like, maybe not yet, but I'm sure you'll email them or spam them to make sure that they go to the event. If they go to agencyexitplan.com, that resource is really good. And that is the thing. It's like, you guys do it right. And I'm not just saying this. That's the reason why you're on the show. And the reason why you're on the show is because the value that you bring, I was super impressed when I was there, 4 or 5 months ago. And ever since then, we've had this relationship where I think we see where the break right now is in the agency world and where it can be fixed. And it can be fixed. It's going to take just a little bit more effort. And in most cases, most agency owners are like accidental business owners in a lot of ways. They kind of start it and then they're like, oh crap, now I'm managing people. I'm leading people. I got to hire people. I got to fire people. I got to know finances. I have to know. When you started it, you probably didn't expect you needed to know all this. And you guys get all this, and especially with Amari, who's like a ninja, you get all this there. So anyway, so we're not like pumping this up too much, but I really do believe strongly in this, because we do believe that this agency space does need to be rehabilitated to a certain degree. So check it out over at agencyexitplan.com for your freebie there. First 5, get that analysis. First 5 PT listeners, like, that's a pretty big deal. And then check it out at Agency Freedom Live. We'll leave all this over in the show notes over at Perpetual Traffic. And of course, wherever you listen to podcasts, leave us a rating and a review. Helps us get this to a wider audience, especially more agencies, I suppose, so that we revolutionize this world that we live in and also help businesses grow the right way, which is what we're all about here. So anyway, so glad to have you on. Psyched to have you. Sure you'll probably be on again. Chris Martinez from Bloom Partners. So on behalf of my amazing co-host, who's going to catch a fish later today, Lauren E. Petrulo.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Thank you, guys.
Until next show. See ya.
Bye.